Hello everyone, Burb here. As you all know, after each Champions meeting, I like to go and share my thought process during it, as well as share what I've learned. I am also doing the A Finals playback, which is that little fun edited thing I do this time. That link is in the description. If that's all you're looking for, I completely understand. But before that, I'd like to go over what I've learned this one. Firstly, how did we end up doing? Real quick. I ended up running 4 separate characters this time because we did do a swap. I will talk about why in a second. But in last place, technically, is Taiki Shuttle because I only ran her for the first day. She ended up getting 1 first place victory, but we swapped her out for Gold Ship, who ended up getting 7 more. So the Gold Ship ended up becoming a good choice for reasons I will explain in a second, but she ended up winning 7 on her own. Fuji Kaseki was our Oshi pick. She got 6 more victories, and of course, Taishin got 37. So at first glance, it does look like a Taishin carry, lol Taishin potential Uma, right? But there were some decisions we had to make to really push that win rate up because even on day 1, Taishin's victories was only about 6, right, which is below the rate that we had, and our changes to our team comp actually helped push that up a lot, and that's really where I learned a lot from this, which I will get into right now. So 62.5% win rate total. That is above our average. I'm usually sitting around the 50 to 55%. This one, Derby, we just ended up doing very, very well. But the day 1 swap, why did I do it? A lot of people were confused about this. Why would you swap out a UG3 for an SS Plus, to be fair? The reason being is kind of what lobbies we were getting into partially. Day 1, we had 9 Lucky Pace lobbies, and we would end up having close to 25 to 30 Lucky Pace lobbies, which I understand is a lot higher than most people were getting. But the problem is that Taiki just can't exist in first place. I did not get Angling and Scheming because why would I? I did end up getting VPP, and it still just wasn't enough to fight all the other end closers and late surges in the lobby when those light frontrunner lobbies happened. So Taiki Shuttle was not doing very well on her own in the lobby comps that we were getting. And the point of running her was to sort of push forward the pack a bit by running a pace chaser so that we could run trace and cheer on our backliners. But it turned out that another thing that I will talk about was sort of making that work anyways. So swapped out pace chaser for end closer. So we stopped doing PLE and we started doing LEE. So pace late end. The other reason why I swapped it out is as I alluded to in the Champions Meeting guides, dueling. If you're running 3 separate styles, it's a little bit difficult to hit duels because they all hit at different times because they're trying to get different things, and you never really are running at the same speed because you're different roles. So you're kind of dependent on other characters in the lobby built by the other players, and if they didn't have your particular role or if they didn't build them as strong as you just wouldn't duel, and then you would consistently lose against the random frontrunner hitting Angling and Scheming, or some random other end closer that did end up dueling with his teammate, basically. So while dueling is not just your teammates, a lot of times you're able to control it a lot more when you're running double end closer, which is what ended up happening is that Gold Ship and Taishin would both at least hit somewhat and then end up dueling each other, and Taishin would usually get the victory from that point. So that really pushed up Taishin's win rate because we just had to think about it. Now we were running Trace and Cheer, which we'll talk about in a second. The other reason is that when Taiki wouldn't hit a lot of times, what would happen around the final corner in the situations where there were front runners, a lot of times Taiki would end up becoming an overtake target, and I don't know exactly if this is why it was happening, but it just felt like Taishin would just wide swing into Narnia after trying to pass her on the final corner, and that was happening consistently, honestly, whereas Fuji would usually be behind because of a bad late start, to be honest. When I was running Gold Ship, normally one or the other end closer would be far enough forward and running fast enough that either they would not be basically an overtake target because they're both running so fast, or we would complete the pass because there isn't really any late surges or pace chasers to pass, and so Taishin would end up becoming a lot better because she'd go to like lane 2 or 3 rather than going all the way to the outer lane. These were just things I was noticing on day 1 that caused me to really think about it and realize that I probably just need to run 2 end closers, and if I had time I could have changed the end closer, but Gold Ship was, I mean, she was fine. Like she did the job she was set out to do. But when we were running double end closer, all of a sudden we had a Fuji dilemma. So turns out I'm an idiot and I didn't take Radiant Star. Normally, yes, Radiant Star is not very efficient. However, if you're looking at this Fuji on the left, I have updrafters on your left and ladder trace and cheer. And those are all back half of the pack. And usually, because we weren't getting very many front heavy lobbies, we would not have any acceleration. So Fuji would be just in 4th place and be done. Like, there's no chance of her to ever hit an acceleration at that point. If we had just a Radiant Star, she probably would get 3 or 4 more wins, honestly, but she was doing the job she was set out to do, which really was to punish these frontrunner lobbies. And here's the deal. I'm a good backliner player. I will give myself my laurels in there. If there's a bunch of end closers and late surger, I'm confident that the Taishin that I made and my gold chip that I've made are strong enough to win more often than not, which was very true. My Taishin was insane. It was guts build. It had a ton of mid-race, a lot of double circle skills to win that mid-race in the end closer battle. Okay? What I was losing to a lot was the massive front runner lobbies. And basically, why this ended up working so well and why the win rate for Taishin ended up going up so much is because I put Louder Trace and Cheer on all 3. And whether or not the game decided, hey, let's not put you in frontrunner lobbies because of that, you could consider that tinfoil hat theory 1. But in the positions where there were a ton of frontrunners, this was working. Because if there's 6 frontrunners or 6 fronts and paces, and I have 3 Louder Trace and Cheers, they're all hitting. So everything's a 0.2. All I need is for one of these 3 to pass their wit check, and I'm at 0.6 or even 0.8 with Nimble Navigator on them too. So when there was a 6 frontrunner lobby, the V-Bourbon was hitting 0.4, and I was hitting 0.8, and usually Taishin was just winning at that point. So it was doing the job that it needed to do. Fuji was actually winning. She did end up winning 6 over the course of time. It's just we didn't have very many front lobbies, but it would end up making it eventually. So this is one thing I learned a lot, is that if I feel like I'm weak towards a particular team comp, like just from the style that I play and the build that I play, just lean heavily into the full counter of it. I didn't take Nishino Flower all. I took Louder Trace and Cheer on all 3 so that whenever there was this really, really meta triple front comp that was coming out, and that's what was destroying me in rooms, I would have 3 chances to roll that lottery, and most of the time, don't know exactly the math. If it's 75%, it would be 95.5%. If it was 50-50, it'd be like 80%-ish. I would just win because someone would hit super hard because I have 3 tickets to go and take that victory. Okay? So Fuji did win. Here was Fuji's first win. Just putting it out there. I did end up making it. Yes, Ray got, I think, 12 ticket wins, and I only got 6. So, yes, she wins this round. It's all pace chasers, though.
I mean, how could you can overtake them?
Yeah. Fuji hit oil. It's a Saiyan in first. It's a little tough. How is that not a follow? There it is. I get to complain about the other 50 all this time. Is it enough? There it is. We got it. Alright, Rays can be happy now. We got Fuji a win. So without further ado, don't want to go and extend it any further. Here is a finals. I hope you enjoy the edits.
1番人気はもちろんこの子、ここまで無敗、三冠ウマ娘、6番ミホノブルボン、実力は負けていません。2番人気、ここまで無敗、トリプルティアラのウマ娘、アグネスデジタル、注目のここまで無敗、トリプルティアラのウマ娘、富士奇跡、3枠3番での出走。
いや、十分いい顔してますね。
ゲートイン完了、出走の準備が整いました。今スタートが切られました。各ウマ娘、綺麗なスタートを切りました。
これは一度が熾烈になりそうですね。
先行争いは6番ミホノブルボン、4番テンウッスン、1番テンウッスン、最高峰からのレースとなった富士奇跡、大丈夫か。
ちょっと厳しい位置ですが、ここからの巻き返しに期待です。
先頭集団を見ていきましょう。さあ期待に応えて6番ミホノブルボン、逃げる逃げる、早くも先頭。続いて4番テンウッスン、2番ミホノブルボン、3番手
Hello everyone, Burb here. Today I'll be talking about potential and kinetic energy. Now, these concepts are closely related, however, there are a few key differences. Potential energy is simply energy that is stored due to a quality or property of the object. Now, these qualities and properties are many, however, the most common is the position of the object. However, this can also occur due to a state of matter or its electromechanical properties or even its chemical or nuclear makeup. Now, for today's example, I do not believe that Tyson would approve of being stretched, nor do I deny that opposite charges do attract and form energy. However, I think it is simplest to go and show position-based potential energy, or one form of it being gravitational potential energy. Kinetic energy is simply the energy of motion. It is the fact that you are moving, you have energy itself. And you can go and convert between potential and kinetic energy. However, the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. The part that is often left out about that is that it must be a closed system. If your scope is not basically the entire universe or a system that is closed completely, you can lose energy, and that is called inefficiency, right? In order to go and convert between the two, you must have work. Now, work is done by forces, and when a force does work upon an object, it changes its energy. That is the whole basis of kinetic and potential energy and the transfer between the two. In our example today, where Narita Tyson is on the top of the slide, she is above the ground, and she can lower her altitude, which means that gravity is pulling her down. There is a force of gravity that is wanting her to go towards the surface of the earth. Now, because she is on a slide and there is a surface beneath her, she has a normal force. Now, the normal force is acting opposite of gravity at the angle of the surface itself. This is the force that you feel, being a little pedantic here because it is also technically gravity, when you jump and you feel that impact. That is the normal force. That is what fatigues you when you are walking around. Now, does it really matter between gravity? Not particularly, honestly. However, note that on a slide, due to its angled surface, it is not exactly up and down. And because of this difference, yes, there's a friction force. For simplicity, we are ignoring it in this case. The change in energy would be along the complement of these two directions. So as Tyson would go down the slide, her kinetic energy would be increasing while she is getting closer to the ground, meaning her gravitational potential energy is decreasing. Because gravity is working upon Tyson, she is changing and converting her potential energy into kinetic energy due to the sum of forces working upon her. In terms of Uma Musume, your potential energy is simply your stats as well as your skills itself. You have the potential of increasing your velocity in many ways in terms of acceleration and velocity directly. Now, your potential turns into kinetic energy at a rate determined by how well you proc these skills. Take, for example, Narita Tyson, in the example shown today in the race that we are currently going on, she stayed in the back half of the pack all the way up to the 50% mark. This means she has a great amount of potential energy currently because of a skill called Loud and Trace or Cheer. Loud and Trace and Cheer has stored up a bunch of potential energy to be used later when the time is right, because if Loud and Trace and Cheer were to proc here, it would not be in the acceleration zone. So instead, Loud Trace and Cheer has stored up this potential energy because we have held back for the first 50% of the race to proc at the proper time, at which point Narita Tyson would then convert all that potential energy into acceleration, which would increase our velocity, which means we are increasing our kinetic energy, therefore converting our potential Uma into a kinetic-based Uma. Daya no way. So let's see the potential Uma convert to kinetic in action.
生き残るめがけてだけど足を動かしている矛盾にまた心臓が反応する叫んでいる走りながら求める夜明けに本音潜まって何もできないかもしれないそれでもここにいた
Biwa, kill this child!
And so we won a finals without much hassle, which hasn't happened for like 5 CMs or so for me. So that was a nice change of pace. It was not the derby, so it wasn't as emotional, of course. But honestly, the story of the CM is I just sort of learned a lot about this game. I don't really hotspot my characters very often. So the two biggest things that I learned really were, one, if the lobby compositions that you're facing aren't really going well, you can swap it. Your team kind of needs a total game plan to work together. And three, each one of your particular Umas really needs a game plan to actually win the race. This time it was literally louder trace and cheer on every single one of these, and we just brute force the RNG to make sure that someone hits in those lobbies that really were very unfavorable for, and just say for those other backline lobbies, hey, I'm just better at that point. I made a better end closer than you did. There's nothing you can do, which means I can go and really just think a one-track mind on the one situation where I can be beaten. And that really is how I created this, I would say, semi-unstoppable Narita Taishin. I mean, it's a almost 50% win rate just on her own, okay? So yes, Taishin was meta. I understand that. Perfectly fine to run meta, in my opinion. Never said the opposite. And also, it's one of the few CMs she's actually like top of the meta this time. So I wanted to feel that this time, and I wanted to take a break after the Derby CM, let's be honest. Now, why did I run winning ticket? That's the other big question. If you didn't know, I won a 5v5 match against Ray. So Ray had to run running ticket this champions meeting. I ended up running Fujikaseki in Solidarity, so that that's the least I can do, because this character is actually built for Miles, and Ticket is certainly not built for Miles. She basically has no ultimate and has Mile F aptitude. So honestly, Fujikaseki was quite easy to build. It was just I had trouble building her because I'm dumb. So I did end up getting 6 wins, and I think she ended up getting 12 wins on Ticket. But at the end of the day, I think it worked out for her.
Okay, she's in 6th though, which is a little bit low. She'll still get Trace and Cheer. Did she? Oh my god. Oh my god, tickets. It has to be tickets.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
Are you serious? Tickets! Tickets! Come on, please! Tickets! 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 Tickets!
So now that winning ticket has won for 2 separate YouTubers over 2 separate consecutive champions meetings, I think there is only one completely unbiased, objective conclusion that can be reached, which is that winning ticket is just the best character in the game. Her ultimate is called our ticket to win, which means you cannot lose a finals. It's impossible. S tier. This isn't even her final form. So I think all the characters I run ticket has had their time in the sun this time. I'm going to go and just leave you with, I don't know, a fun little in-game winning live. Hope you enjoyed Gemini Cup. This has been my experience with it. Take care, everyone. Burb out.
何度も涙を流して何度も何